You know, after 20 years of photography and videography and kind of doing that as a hobby and now going full time, I can see it a little better now. Oh yeah, this is incredible. I've never had a camera lens like this around. I don't want you to flip off. I'm not gonna hurt you, man. This is the most expensive toy I've ever bought myself, so, you know, I've never had anything like this. Birds everywhere. What's happening, y'all? It's Cole here with Meager Media, and today we are out here at one of my favorite parks in Rowlett, Texas, right by my house, about a 2-minute drive, and we're just gonna play around with a new toy I got for Christmas. I actually got a little early for myself on Black Friday. I decided it was about time for me to buy something that would help take my business to the next level, and let me go ahead and turn this around and show you kind of what I'm talking about here. So this is the actual camera body. The Canon R6 MKII is a Canon. The lens is technically a Sigma. This thing is pretty awesome. Oh, wow. This thing is a Canon, and not just because the actual camera, the Canon R6 MKII is a Canon, because the lens is technically a Sigma. Actually a Sigma 150 to 600 contemporary lens, so that means it can get up to a 600 millimeter focal length. The Canon R6 Mark II is a pretty incredible camera. So I'm gonna share kind of my experience learning to use this setup and get into some of this nature photography and wildlife photography. Different type of duck. And I'm not a bird guy, but been saving up my whole life for something like this, and this is going to take my photography business to the next level and allow me to really do some sharp sports photography and punch in without being a distraction and having to get too close up to the action. And really, even when I'm back up in Sulphur, Oklahoma, helping Dusty out on the Cross Timbers Bison Ranch, this piece of equipment right here is going to help keep me safe, because now I don't have to get in the pen and get in corners in sketchy situations just to get up close to the action. I can kind of set up my new DJI wireless mic system to this bad boy and then keep myself and my equipment 30, 40 yards away if I have to when they're working them. And then next time we're gonna be able to punch in and get some really cool shots and then mic Dusty up to this thing. And it should be interesting. It's better for everybody all around, including the animals. So something like this was a hard pill to swallow, a big purchase. No, that whole setup is a few mortgage payments, but it'll come around. It'll pay for itself. It's long overdue. I've been doing this thing for 20 years with videography and photography as a hobby, and I've always kind of just been budget guy and never bought anything over an $800 setup or a $1,000 setup. And the Canon M50 is what I'm moving on from. So taking the jump from a Canon M50 with a kit lens to one of these, a Canon R6 Mark II with a Sigma 150 to 600 lens. So if that's something you're interested in, is seeing some of these behind the scenes photography shoots and how I shoot these videos and kind of how I'm using this equipment and learning how to use this equipment, you can like and subscribe, I guess, and follow along for the ride. So we'll see you guys in the next one. Oh, try to see what he looks like through these branches a little better. Keep an eye out for where Mama Hawk went.
All right, y'all, now that we've seen some of the better images that I was able to capture that day, and you could see some of the manual settings that I had when I was taking those pictures, for the rest of this video, we're gonna share what the hybrid auto mode looks like and how it kind of can capture a little bit of pictures in the Canon default color settings at the same time, capturing a couple seconds of video on each end of your picture with the audio that happened in real time while you were taking that photo. So it's a pretty cool setting that Canon has, and I'm just now playing around with it. And it has some limitations because obviously you can't shoot in manual and change the settings too much. So you're not gonna be able to get the perfect images and these tack sharp images that you were able to get in the same way you could if you were in manual mode. However, sometimes there's also limitations to manual mode because, as you know, when you're out in the field and taking pictures and trying to focus on the composition and what your subjects are and framing those shots, you don't always have time to switch into the manual settings and change your ISO or your shutter speed or your aperture to get the look you want. So the hybrid auto mode or aperture priority are honestly two of my favorite modes to shoot in if I'm shooting real-time subjects or street photography or wildlife photography like this. And a hack that you can do to help yourself and set a kind of a range for your shutter speed or a range for your ISO is to put it on default ISO when you're in there, depending on the type of camera setup you have and the lens you've got going with it. Another thing you can do is set a minimum shutter speed default so that when it is in one of these automatic settings, it can't drop below 160 frames a second or down to 50 frames a second, and then you're trying to capture a picture of a moving subject, and then when you look back, it ends up being blurry. So if you set your minimum shutter speed above 160, 200, and you set your ISO below 4000 if you have a newer, nicer camera, you're not gonna have blurry subjects. And you're not gonna have too much noise in your images either, because you've set those ranges to prevent that problem from happening. So it really helps if you go in and mess with your settings like that based on your own personal preferences and kind of what you're trying to shoot that day, and it will really help you get a lot more images, a lot more shots to pick from when you're editing, instead of being stuck in the field fumbling with manual settings trying to get the right exposure, and then by the time you get the exposure set right, your subject's already moved or your composition's messed up. So that's just the first tip that I can share with you from messing with this for about a week or so. And the next one is, you can see right here that the footage is getting pretty shaky and wobbly. On all these little video clips before and after me taking these photos, you can see there's a lot of shake, there's a lot of jitter. I'm kind of all over the place, and that's because I'm on a tripod. And tripods are great for certain types of photography, especially portrait photography or standing subjects or stationary subjects or landscape photography. However, if you're shooting a moving subject like sports photography or someone at work doing a job on site, and especially if you're doing wildlife photography and zoomed all the way into 600 millimeters trying to get a tight shot of a faraway subject like I am here with these birds,
300 to 600 here.
It's going to be extremely shaky, because every tiny movement, when you're that far zoomed in, every tiny movement looks like a huge jerk. So I was actually able to pick up something else that is going to help me with this in the next video, and it's actually a tripod gimbal head. So it makes it a lot more fluid to move your camera around and track your moving subjects while you're zoomed in without getting this shaking and jittering and losing subjects like that. Mainly because you're able to move it so fluidly once your camera is balanced on that gimbal head. So I've never used one of those before, but I did just pick up a Surrey, I think it's a Surrey P10 on Amazon. So I picked that up. I'm excited to try it out, and I'll share that experience and some of the learning curve that I had learning how to use that, and the first few tips that helped me progress in my photography skills while I'm learning, because again, I'm not an expert by any means. I'm just a guy who's loved photography for 20 years and always played around with cameras as a hobby. So again, if you have any other recommendations or tips or things that I said that might not line up with your own experiences, please share it in the comments, and feel free to provide your own feedback and opinions. And I'd love to hear back, and I'd love to learn from you guys too. So I'm just out here sharing my journey, sharing my experience, and kind of giving you guys an insight and a little view from behind the camera if you're in the same boat of wanting to step up your game and kind of test out some of this equipment without having to fork over cash on rentals or a few grand on getting one of these setups yourself. So I'm going to go ahead and keep sharing my experience from this. If you are a person who wants to purchase one of these new cameras or looking into get some of this equipment, and find out if it's something that is going to be right for you.
I have no idea. I'm not. Shh, don't tell my wife, but I also might have picked something up for our portrait business, which also goes with this camera. That's a pretty fancy tool and might not be the last little gadget upgrade that I bought that I'm going to share with you guys. So I'm going to spend the next few months learning how to use all this professional gear and get myself set up to where next time I go back up to Oklahoma with Dusty and the Cross Timbers Bison herd, we're gonna be able to get some really, really, really good looking footage, and it's gonna be a little bit safer.